Hello besties and welcome to another Genshin video! Notice how I didn't say theory this time. With the delay of 2.7 and the amount of theories I've already made, I'm kind of running out of content to make new theories with, so I want to try branching out into lore videos. These won't necessarily be theories, but since some of Genshin's lore is really complicated, there'll be a few mini theories here and there. Lately I've been talking a lot about what Teyvat's future may look like, but to get a better idea of that, I think we need to look at its past more closely. I'm not talking about the Archon War or anything following it. There were so many things that happened way before that, and in my opinion, some of them are far more important. The earliest era in Teyvat's history was the reign of the Seven Sovereigns. This was back when the only species in Teyvat was the Bishops. The Sovereigns were also Bishops, but they were the apex of their species. Like today's Archons, the Seven Sovereigns maintained their own nations and elements. The Hydro Sovereign's country was likely Inazuma thanks to what we know about Enkinomiya and its location in the middle of the ocean. I and some other Genshin theorists believe that Ajdaha is the Geo Sovereign. Last week in my Sumeru predictions video, I talked about how Sumeru may have been the original nation of Geo when the Sovereigns were around. Then, the Primordial One, who may or may not be named Fanis, arrived in Teyvat and created 4 shades of itself. I assume this means they split their identity into 4 separate entities that could spread out and enforce their will across Teyvat. I think that 2 of its shades are Istaroth, the elusive god of time, and Paimon, who bears a strong narrative resemblance to Fanis. We only ever learned about Istaroth's true identity when hearing about the Primordial One, and given their actions and how hard it is to pin them down in a specific location, I assume that Istaroth could be one of their shades. Istaroth has played a huge part in Mondstadt and Inazuma's different histories across millennia. As for Paimon being Fanis, they're both always depicted wearing crowns, they can both fly, they're both genderless, and they both emerged from the ocean. Paimon's name follows the naming pattern of Teyvat's other gods. They're all named after demons from the Lesser Key of Solomon. This implies that she's a god too, but none of the other deities seem to recognize her at all despite her saying she's lived in Teyvat for a while. To me that seems like she could be just as elusive as Istaroth, who also may be one of the Primordial One's 4 shades. The Primordial One battled the 7 Sovereigns for 40 years. Although that's a small blip in Teyvat's overall timeline, 40 years realistically is a long time for there to be an ongoing active war between only 2 parties and 8 participants. The Sovereigns eventually cut their losses and fled underground, leaving Teyvat in the Primordial One's hands. If I'm right about Ajdaha being the Geo Sovereign and him originally being from Sumeru, he must have moved from Sumeru to Liyue and gone blind at some point between the end of the war with the Primordial One and 2,000 years ago. After the Sovereigns went into hiding, the Primordial One established the first throne of the heavens and creates the human race. The Primordial One, its shades, and humanity enter a covenant, the biblical word for agreement. We don't know exactly what this covenant entails, but I assume it has something to do with exposing the Primordial One's actions and motives. We know that people in civilizations who learn too much tend to disappear, and I don't know who else to blame that on but the Primordial One, who may be Celestia itself at this point. Urabashi knew he would die because he learned too much about Celestia, but he attacked Yashiori Island to protect the people of Byakuyakuku and die on his own terms. Guizhong was the smartest figure in all of Teyvat's history, but inexplicably died during the Archon War. I assume that's because she was too smart for her own good. Something similar seems to be brewing with Lisa, who is the smartest person of her generation. Around this time, the humanoid species of Seelies appeared. They were endowed with otherworldly beauty and intelligence which they used to guide humanity. Along with the birth of the Seelies came 3 moons. They were sisters named Arya, Sonnet, and Canon. They'd change places 3 times a month, but if they failed to do so, disaster would come. It seems like everybody was pretty happy at this point. Humans, Seelies, and the Moon Sisters lived their life without any major issues, which is pretty rare for Teyvat. But this was the calm before the storm, as the Primordial One couldn't hold on to their usurped power as tightly as they wanted to. An entity known as the Second Who Came appeared in Teyvat, starting a war with the Primordial One. The heavens and earth are destroyed in the process. At the same time, the Seelie civilization was gravely endangered when a Seelie and a traveler from afar fell in love. 30 days after their union, disaster descended upon the world. The union took place in the lunar palace where the Moon Sisters lived, so I assume the disaster was due to the sisters failing to switch places. The traveler and Seelie were separated for eternity and cursed to forget each other. Enkinomiya sank into the ocean while all of this was happening. It's not clear if the disaster that sank Byakuyakuku was due to the war between the Primordial One and the Second Who Came, or if it was from the prospective failed changing of the Moon Sisters. Then the Moon Sisters turned on each other for unknown reasons, killing one another. 2 of their corpses, the moons, crumbled away, leaving 1 corpse as Teyvat's sole moon today. After the deaths of the Moon Sisters, something called the Solar Chariot fell from the heavens and into the chasm. Shortly before that, Morax was born on December 31st. The Seelies are so distraught by the destruction of their world that they die. Side note, Hu Tao says that butterflies want to be Seelies when they grow up. In Chinese culture, butterflies symbolize death. The Seelies we see today are just ghosts, they're all dead. I think Hu Tao is actually a lot smarter than she lets on. She knows how to enter and exit the realm of the dead, she took over an entire business when she was just a teenager, and she knows that Zhongli is Rex Lapis without him telling her. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that maybe she knows what happened to the Seelies. No one else ever really mentions them or their history, but she does for some reason. We don't actually know if the Primordial One or the second who came won their war. If Istaroth and Paimon are actually shades of the Primordial One, then I assume they won because the shades are technically part of them. I'm not sure how the shades work, but I assume that if the Primordial One were to die, so would the shades. Regardless, the unknown victor forbade people from learning about anything that happened before their rise to power. After the catastrophic era of the Second Throne, Celestia sent envoys to live among humanity and make the volatile world more hospitable for them. Humans could communicate directly with Celestia, but their lives were short-lived. Celestia would recycle the Earth and all living beings. We don't know how long humans had to live in between the recycling. Humanity never found out that they were being recycled by Celestia, and the envoys never told them. A group of people seeking refuge from the snowy wastes of Teyvat found a lush green mountain. They established a civilization there, calling it Salvindagnir, and the mountain just Vindagnir. A princess was born beneath a larger minsal tree and given the ability to see the future by her mother, the priestess. That tree and the others in the area are connected to ley lines. The princess dreams that Durin will destroy Salvindagnir, spreading poison throughout the mountain. Then, Skyfrost Nail falls from Celestia, be it purposefully or not, and causes the mountain to become just as frigid as the land that the civilization had fled from. The nail shatters into 3 pieces, one of which turns the Irminsul tree from the princess's birth into the frost-bearing tree. Paranoid, the princess gives an outlander named Imunlaukur a great sword of star silver, asking him to go out and find answers. While Imunlaukur is away, the princess abandons her painting to inspect the 3 pieces of Skyfrost Nail. They split again, this time releasing orbs that completely freeze the area they're in. The tree she was born beneath is shattered from the orb. She attempts to graft a branch from a living tree onto the shattered one, but it withers away and she dies beside it. Someone else tries to fix the leyline trees but can't do it, so they bury the deceased princess. When Imunlaukur returns, nobody is there. Everyone in Salvindagnir has died because of Celestia. He stores the greatsword with the princess's paintings and leaves the mountain never to return. After the fall of Salvindagnir, Conria was established as a godless nation. Skyfrost Nail and the subsequent fall of Salvindagnir may be the recycling of human civilization that Celestia did during this era. But for some reason the recycling failed because everyone in Salvindagnir survived the first impact. The princess had already foreseen disaster not at the hands of Celestia, but Conria. When she was alive, Conria didn't even exist yet. Celestia may have known about the princess's premonition and seen that their plan for things had changed. To fix it, they dropped Skyfrost Nail to just get rid of Salvindagnir prematurely, but since it wasn't how they would normally recycle the Earth and humanity, it backfired. But Celestia instead doubled down and had the nail split into the orbs that caused the princess to die. To me, this isn't a typical case of Celestia killing somebody because they were too smart. It's much more complicated than that. The princess saw that her fate was different than the one that Celestia had planned for her. Salvindagnir fell because of Conria's prospective existence. Maybe that's why Celestia went so crazy with the Cataclysm. That would explain why Celestia hated Conria so much more than any other civilization. But let's get back to the timeline. In Enkanomiya, Abrax finishes construction on the Dainichi Mikoshi, also known as Helios. A year after the Dainichi Mikoshi is built, Enkanomians try to get back to the surface but are unsuccessful. They think this is because the Primordial One has trapped them down here, meaning that the Primordial One must have won the war. A group of corrupt Enkanomian nobles convince everyone to worship the Dainichi Mikoshi as their deity and establish a group called the Sun Children. The Sun Children were kids who were manipulated by the nobles and made to look like the rulers of Enkanomiya. Abrax and Spartacus were imprisoned by the Sun Children because they opposed the corrupt nobles. Decarabian, the god of storms, declares Mondstadt as his and established the capital city in what is now Storm Terror's lair. Andreas received powers from an unknown deity and became a god. Decarabian's part of Mondstadt is constantly windy, while Andreas' side is always cold. Mondstadt was completely inhospitable by normal people at this time. I assume this was the snowy place that the people of Salvindagnir sought to escape, but we can't know for sure. Meanwhile, Morax is doing everything he can to make Lyria safe. He raises Mount Tianhong to protect the land from the sea. Weizhong and her people move north of the mountain, where she befriends Morax. They establish Guili Assembly, spanning from Stonegate to Mount Tianhong. Guizhong and Cloud Retainer create the Guizhong Ballistas to prevent external threats. Havria establishes Saltarai nearby. The previous Hydro Archon creates the Lock Folk and sends them out across Teyvat to spy on others. It's unknown why she did this, considering that it happened before the Archon War. Perhaps she was paranoid that something bad was coming and she just wanted to be prepared. The Thunderbird discovers a foggy island and makes its home there. After some time, it leaves and humans show up there. The humans worship the Thunderbird, but the Thunderbird didn't care about them at all, save for a child named Rue who sang to her. Then, all hell broke loose when Celestia announced that 7 divine seats had opened up, launching the Archon War. Since we won't be getting any new lore for a while to make theories with, I'm just gonna do more of these lore overview videos. I actually had a lot of fun doing this, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next week we'll be looking at Teyvat's timeline from the Archon War to present day. Let me know if there's anything you want me to check out for a video, lore, theories, or anything. I've been meaning to branch out for a while, so it's nice to have the delay as an excuse to finally do that. As always, thank you so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye, besties!